Today's special guest is Pat Harrigan. I think for the third time I'm introducing you tonight. Welcome to the show, Pat.
The introductions just get better every time, Chad. Thanks for having me again. It's good to be back.
I think I've inflated your introduction now. This time when I introduce you, the story's going to get so much bigger. Oh, that's great. So we go with the flow. We had Pat Harrigan on the show, was it maybe a year ago? I think
Probably, yeah.
it's probably close to that. And a lot has happened in this last year, not only in your life, but in our life. And so we're so excited to reconnect because you're back at it. Your resume has gotten even bigger, and we're excited to talk about that tonight as one of the leaders for this nation. You're a perfect person to do that. We're going to talk about it. So let me tell you about Pat. So Pat is a Green Beret. He also is the CEO of a business that we'll talk about how that got started. And one of the things that we want to talk about tonight is he is running for U.S. Congress. What an important position to be in, especially what's going on not only around the world, but right here in the United States. And he's going to represent, I think he's going to represent North Carolina. So Pat, welcome to the show.
Chad, thanks so much for having me. Thank you for the kind words.
So I just want to double check to make sure if you're on live with us, if you want to give a comment or two, just to make sure that the comment section is working. We want to let you know that you'll have the opportunity to ask questions throughout the show, and you can submit those right inside the comment section. Okay, so we're getting some feedback now, so we are up and live. Thank you for those comments that are coming through. So let's start with, okay, there's comments coming in. Thank you so much for those. And if you have a question throughout the show for Pat, just let us know. We definitely try to integrate almost all of the questions. That's why we do these live. So first of all, Pat, tell the audience a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm a husband. I'm a father to two beautiful little girls. I'm a West Point graduate, nuclear engineer, former commander in the Special Forces. As Chad said, I'm also now a small business owner, or maybe medium-sized business. And look, I just have a real passion for this country. And I've got my two little girls. Their names are Reagan and McKinley. And they're 4 and they're 6. And I am very concerned for the world that they're going to grow up into and what kind of world I'm going to hand off to them. And so I've recently gotten involved in politics. This is my second cycle, now in a very Republican district out to the west of Charlotte. And so we're very excited about the journey that we've had, grateful for all the opportunities and all the incredible people that my wife and I and family have been able to meet, and are really excited for what's to come here.
Yeah, just so you know, this is my notes for your interview today. And
that's making me nervous.
I just circled the red circles
Yeah.
down there for your daughters, Reagan and McKinley, and I did meet them, and your awesome wife, Rocky, as well. And so we've had the privilege of getting to know you even in your last campaign. And I tell you, if you don't know who Pat is, and I'm especially talking to the people in the Carolinas, is get behind this man, because this is going to be a special opportunity to put someone that we know, we love, and we can connect with in a position of influence, even more than he is now. And so we're going to talk about all those pieces because you have such a wild story, Pat. You have a neat story. We're going to break that down about why you're running, all the good stuff, but you're currently in business. And we talked about this and how we were going to talk about your business and how it got started. And I especially love how it got started into where it is today. And where it is today, I think you have a 120,000 square foot facility, which I have seen for the first time a few weeks ago, and it was an honor to come there. So tell us a little bit how that started.
Yeah, so the original story begins when my wife got fed up with my firearms hobby that was consuming too much of our annual household disposable income. And so she not so indiscreetly told me that I needed to curb my firearm spending habits. And I said, well, honey, I don't really want to do that. But if I started a business, could I take the profits from that business and reinvest them into my firearms hobby? And she said, knock yourself out. And so she let me take $3,000 from my first deployment that we had saved up and allowed me to start this business. And over the last, I guess 10 years now, since that's happened. Now, not all that time was focused on building the business that we have today, but over that period of time, it's just grown and grown and grown, and the opportunities that we've been afforded have grown both in size and responsibility. And we've just been incredibly blessed on this journey that we're on, that really started in a double wide trailer in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and is where it is today at the facility that you came and visited a couple weeks ago, Chad. So we've had a ton of fun, and it's been an amazing experience.
Hey, if you've ever lived in a trailer, put it in the comment section. Let us know. I actually lived with my grandma once in a trailer, and I loved it. I loved my grandma, and I've had family members in there, and quite frankly, I've had family members in there that also turned in. They lived in a trailer, and then boom, they had this work ethic that brought them someplace. Like sounds like you did. And so, tell us a little bit about like the fear that could have been associated with I'm going to go for it in business, because I'm sure there was a point you had mentioned the $3,000. I mean, was that the point in your life where that $3,000 probably meant a lot to you at that point in time?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, Chad. I was actually just going through a bunch of old telephones that I had, and capturing all the data, and I came across a screenshot of my bank account when we started the company, and it didn't have much more than $3,000 in it, and it's, I'll tell you what, you can't just go for it in business until you square away your personal life. And I'll tell you, the story for us actually started up in Alaska when my wife and I, we were kind of new graduates out of college. And one of the mistakes that kids make right out of college is they try to replicate the quality of life that their parents had, right? And not understanding that in this country, our parents didn't get to where they were immediately after college, right? There wasn't that instant gratification that kids so often seek nowadays. And we fell for the cultural trap, and we were making great money. I mean, I was an officer in the Army. We were getting paid, overseas pay for being up in Alaska, cost of living adjustments, all that stuff. And then my wife was a very successful realtor, and we spent all of our money. We didn't invest a darn thing. We didn't go into debt, but we didn't live a smart financial life. And so we left Alaska, with the blessing of God. We sold our house up there 5 days before we left, because quite frankly, we probably wouldn't have been able to afford anything down in North Carolina. We lived so nicely up there. But my wife and I just took that opportunity. We were driving down the Alcan Highway, and we were listening to Dave Ramsey, good old Dave Ramsey. And we decided, you know what? This is the way that we're going to live our lives. And we ended up buying a double wide trailer. We totally flipped our quality of life, bought a double wide trailer as $813 a month mortgage on some acreage. And while all my peers in the officer corps were spending $2,000 to $3,000 a month, we were banking all that difference, and we were investing in us and building the business that we now have today. And so, the transition of actually just going for it begins with solid principles applied in your own life first. If you do that, you can do anything.
Yeah, man, I'm so glad you said that, because I'm actually looking into some of the comments that are going through, and I'm noticing there's a lot of young people that are on. And
Great.
and I even see like my daughter is on, and she's 20 years old, and she's going to ministry school, and she's at that place where she's got some decisions to make, and how to invest time and money. And I'm seeing some young people on there that are really awesome people, so it's great for them to hear. So I want to transition a little bit, because you've decided you're a successful businessman. Money's not an issue for you now. You have served this nation, and you could say, hey, I've already served my nation, but you're back in the game, and you're saying, I'm running for U.S. Congress. Why are you doing that?
Look, I am tired of failed leaders leading us down the road to failed outcomes in this country, and I am not about to sit by and watch them destroy this nation, destroy the world order, and do that while my kids are young, impressionable, growing up, and ultimately going to grow into a world that, from my perspective, if I stay out of the crafting of that, a very dangerous world that I don't like them going into. And I really do feel like we are at the brink or a transition point in this country where we are about to have the first generation of Americans have less opportunity than the last generation of Americans. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, right? It's the economy, it's national security, it's our overall posture and respect that the United States enjoys, has earned in the past, is no longer earning, but enjoys with the rest of the world. We have rampant crime, inflation is insane, and ultimately, like, we just have a snowball of problems that is not getting smaller. It's actually getting bigger because systematically, every day that goes by, we are not solving these problems. We're letting them accumulate. And if we don't have principled leaders of character get up to Washington, I don't think anything's going to change. And so I can either sit on the sidelines and go make more money, but at some point, what's the point?
Right.
If my kids aren't going to get to enjoy it, and my friends' kids aren't going to get to enjoy it because we threw the game.
So you mentioned, I think you said principal leaders of character. Did I say that? Did I say that correctly?
I think so. I don't remember what I said, Jeff, but yeah,
Okay.
that sounds
Well,
about right.
you said character, and you also said leadership, and it sounds like something that a good person running for office should say. But what does that really mean? What does that look like? Because when President Trump became president, I think a lot of people liked him because he wasn't a politician. And
Yeah.
so he was an outsider. He wasn't involved in what people call deep state. And so how do we know someone actually has character that's running for political office?
I think people know it when they see it. I really do. I think it's that simple. I mean, one of the reasons that President Trump has been so successful is because you get what you see, right? It's actually an element of authenticity that I think people are just dying for in their politicians. And look, I'm not the most polished guy. I'm going to get out here. We're going to have plenty of ums and and all this
Yeah.
stuff that a totally non-professional politician would bring to the table here. But the reality is, I'm not a politician, right? I'm a concerned citizen that has some means. There's a ton of people that have way more means than me, but I have the means and I have the experience to do what I'm doing right now. And it is critically important, from my perspective, with everything that I know, that at this juncture in our nation's history, for people that have the capability to stand up no matter what it costs them personally or professionally. We just have to do it, because if we don't, we're not going to like the outcome in a few years. And I think we're seeing that as the world slowly burns due to a lack of American leadership.
So let's unpack this in layers because you're running for U.S. Congress, representing North Carolina. Let's start there, and then I'd like to go to higher levels. I'd like to go to the nation levels, and then I'd really like to touch on even international issues because, hey, you were deployed in Afghanistan, so you have a unique perspective. So let's start, though, at the state. So here we are at the state level. You're running for U.S. Congress. What are the important issues if you are elected?
Well, things at the state level are a little bit different than the federal level, right? I mean, we've got a significant problem with education and crime in this state, and I think most people understand that. Now, to the extent that somebody from the federal government or a federal representative can impact those things, I think is another discussion. However, there is no doubt in my mind that as I talk to people across the state, the things that they are most concerned with is their kids' education, their ability to have school choice, to send their kids where they think is best for their upbringing and the values that they want to instill in their family in terms of finding a place for their kid to land. And then crime, right? I mean, we've got a few cities here between Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, Asheville, where crime is just rampant. It's going unpunished. Because we just don't want to prosecute it. We got these crazy left-wing, ultra-liberal, DAs that aren't enforcing the law, and that's got to stop. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see an atmosphere of lawlessness that, just like weakness precipitates conflict on a global level, that exact same weakness and lawlessness creates and breeds further lawlessness in our cities that will ultimately spill out to our towns and create very unsafe environments. And I think people are starting to see that. They're starting to wake up and they're starting to say, we need to do things differently. And I absolutely will carry that voice forward to Washington. And to the extent that I could have an impact on that locally, I will.
Yeah, I love what you said about school choice. There's such a ripple effect that would cause. I mean, I had Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson on the show, and we talked about that too. And that was something that he wanted to push. And we're hoping that he's going to be the next governor. And we think he's going to do it. But that was
I
a
think he's going to do it too.
yeah, that'd be so awesome. And that's such an important issue. Think about it's almost like then it would turn into a business. There would be performance based issues that would arise. We're like, oh my gosh, why are everyone leaving this school? Well, because you stink, and it's like,
Right.
and the performance levels are going to rise. The values of our homes are going to rise. The benefit to the children is going to be dramatic. If you compare us to the other parts of the world now, we're falling behind in education, and so this will be a great way to hold people accountable in education. And I think it's within your control. That the nice thing is, it's within your control to do something about it. And I think that's on the table. So that's great. So, all right. So these are the things within North Carolina. We had an election, 2 days ago now
We did.
here in the United States. For the conservatives, didn't go so well. And so, and I'm sure in pockets it went okay, and certain pockets it didn't. In key areas, it probably didn't go so well. So, what do you think we learned from 2 days ago that can prepare us for 2024?
I think we did a great job in North Carolina. I think we had some really good, solid results across the state. And I concur with you that across the country, things were a little bit concerning, right? We had decisions up in Ohio that didn't quite go as planned in a very red state. And we had Governor Youngkin, kind of his plan to take back the Senate, also failed. And there were some other indicators across the country that weren't too positive for us. And look, where I think the disconnect is between the disconnect that you're seeing with President Trump and all the other people that are up there on the presidential debate stage, right? That same problem, that same schism in leadership is causing a broken Republican Party to deliver an incomplete message.
Yeah.
And we're not on the same page. And when people don't get clear, concise communication of what we stand for, they think that we're a mess.
Yeah.
And why would they put their faith in a mess?
Yeah.
And I just don't think that we should be surprised at the results of what happened a couple days ago when we can't get together even at the top of the party, even though it's a very clear choice of what needs to happen in order for us to move forward as a party at this juncture, which is, look, these presidential debates that are going on, they're just it's the vice presidential debate. As I've been, joking with a bunch of people, it is quite obviously President Donald Trump that is going to be the nominee, and everybody needs to fall in under that and start rowing in the same direction.
So speaking of that, there's one candidate. I honestly haven't watched any of those debates. However, I've seen highlights, and I'll be honest. I feel like, and I don't have a strong opinion on this, but I feel like I've seen some pretty good highlights from one person, Vivek. And I was curious, do you have an opinion on him? I know some people are talking about him for different roles with the RNC, potentially even working with President Trump. What are your thoughts on him?
I have not spent a ton of time listening to him, but the times that I have heard him, I think there's no doubt that Vivek is going to have a place in the Republican Party moving forward. I think that that's without question. I think that if there were any comments that might be negative, they'd probably be about the same comments that I'd receive, which is we're too young. There's a lot of things that we need to learn, and there's a lot of shaping that has to occur within our messaging in order for us to, I think, achieve the impact or potential that we have. And I would certainly agree with that.
Yeah. Well, maybe you got to stop using Just for Men, and then they won't stop saying that about you. Hey, by the way, I do not use Just for Men, and I'm 48 years old, so I'm so happy.
Hey, me either. I'm doing great over here with this awesome head of hair, and 36 over here. Long way to go, but so far holding strong.
The real vote matters what Rocky and Wendy say. That's all that matters.
I'm not going to get the truth out of my wife, though. She's just going to tell me everything's great. So I'll need Wendy to tell me the truth, Chad.
Wendy does tell the truth. She does do that. She's really good. She's too good at that. All right. So I want to touch on this because I was thinking about as I was preparing for my conversation with you, is you when you were in the service, you were deployed as a leader in Afghanistan, and clearly the Middle East. I say the Middle East, but it, I hope and pray that I'm wrong on this, but they're here too. And what's the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, it may not be manifesting quite yet here in the United States, but it could. Tell me like your experience in the Middle East and what your thoughts are on, with Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran. If you have like a general, like, hey, this is my personal experience and this is what I think, let us hear it.
You have about 4 hours, Chad.
Jeez. Okay.
You just threw a lot at me there.
Yeah, I bet
No,
it
look,
is.
I've deployed into Afghanistan's combat zone twice. I've spent a little over 18 months there between the two. I have done a ton of travel and a ton of business throughout the rest of the Middle East, and still actively travel there today. Do a lot of business in Israel and have for many years. So I'm very well versed in the region. And I will say that what is going on right now is incredibly dangerous. This could absolutely trigger World War III. I think that many people in the defense apparatus of this country are acutely aware of that and are trying to do everything in their power to avoid some sort of spillover or broader expansion of the conflict that already exists today. Simultaneously, you mentioned something about these folks are here, right? Okay, terrorism is all across the Middle East. It's the reason that we went to Afghanistan, and targeted the Taliban for removal because they were hosting terrorists in their country and allowing those terrorists to export that terrorism to the rest of the world, particularly the United States on 9/11. And I think that as we fast forward 22 years to today, we have the same problem. We did not solve the problem, and the problem is not going away. And the problem is very likely already here in the United States because we have such an open southern border that none of our politicians seem to want to do anything about. And all of us are pulling our hair out, particularly those of us that maybe using those Just for Men products. We got plenty of hair to pull out, but we're just fed up with it. We're done because we understand that those attacks that happened in Israel could happen here tomorrow, and we've let it happen. We've been asleep. Everybody's been commenting how how could they be so asleep at the wheel? Hot kettle black. I mean, seriously. Like our entire southern border is wide open, and it's going to be our very soft underbelly, and there's going to be an issue here. I think there's not a question of if; it's just a question of when and how bad. And I think the next generation of Americans is going to look back at our current leadership and say, "You really dropped the ball."
So there's a couple of questions that came in from the audience. I want to take a moment to kind of ask those. This question comes from Kyle Cooper, and he wanted to know more. Like he didn't quite tell us more about your business.
Sure. So
Perfect time to ask that question.
Yeah, no worries, Kyle. So my business actually started kind of feeding my hobby, and then it turned into when I got my federal firearms license. It turned into selling guns to friends and family, to make a few dollars on the side. And ultimately, over the course of a couple of years, I moved down to Fort Bragg. We set up shop outside, of our double wide. We created this 20-foot Connex that was actually really cool. If anybody's seen Lord of War, Nicolas Cage, kind of what he had down in New York City is what we replicated and built our business out of that, which was fun. But long story short, we kind of stumbled into OEM parts provision throughout the rest of the firearms industry. So as the automotive manufacturers have tier one suppliers, we effectively became a tier one supplier to the firearms industry, selling to the largest firearms companies in the country, filling their production line, with components, our components for their guns. And ultimately that turned into and transitioned into a a full-blown manufacturing company as we kind of outgrew the suppliers that we had. We had quality issues with the suppliers, or in some events, suppliers were like, well, Pat's making a ton of money here. Maybe we should just work around Pat. And, we just became a better manufacturer in those circumstances. And so, as Chad said, we now have 120,000 square foot of manufacturing. Our largest business is still serving the OEM customer base that exists within the United States, the largest firearms manufacturers that we have. But we also have our own brands. We're building about 1,000 rifles a week right now, which is pretty cool. So we are very quickly becoming our largest OEM customer, and that has been a transition that we have been nurturing and are very proud of. And now we're actually starting to have a pretty substantial impact in the world of defense, not just the civilian market, both domestically and overseas. And we're very proud of what we built.
And I will tell you, those who are watching, well, obviously you're watching if you're listening, if you're hearing me right now. But when I pulled up for the facility, I actually thought his was like a little section of it. This is like 120,000 square feet from a double wide, and I do have his product. So what's the name of the website, Pat?
It's Zero Delta or US Optics on the rifle scope side, and then we also have unbranded AR.
Awesome. All right. So this question comes from John Maniga, and I know this young man. He's an awesome young man. He's 18 years old. And he says, what can us young people do to prepare for the future and grow as a leader in our community?
That's a great question. And, I don't know if you saw, Chad, in the couple days after October 7th, the number one Googled term was actually about the U.S. military draft. And I think that young people understand what's going on here. They understand the direction that our leaders have unfortunately condemned us to. And not to be doom and gloom, I gave a talk at one of our local universities here just outside of Charlotte a couple days ago. Flew back in from the West Coast. And that evening, spoke with a number of about soon to be college graduates. And they wanted me to come in and talk about politics, but I actually just kind of wanted to come in and talk about life, because really I'm not that far ahead of them. And, what I told one young man who asked a very similar question is I told him, go find a mentor. Go find a mentor right now. And it's somewhat of a old school way of, kind of sharpening your approach to how you think and how you move through life, because we're all just so interconnected these days with these things. Like, why do we actually have to sit down and talk to anybody? Well, guess what? Go find somebody that may not know what AI is, may not understand how to hop onto Zoom, but has an awful lot of life experience that they can transfer to you simply for the fact that they want you to go be successful. And you'd be surprised how many people would be unbelievably receptive to you asking them, hey, could I spend some time with you and pick your brain? Because I'm looking for a mentor. I'm looking to better myself, because I think we're coming into a very different world than the world that we all know and understand today. And I want to prepare myself to be a leader in that world. I guarantee you they're not going to say no.
Yeah. So last question from the audience. The question is, what was it like to serve in Alaska?
It was very cold, and it was either very dark or very light. And, I served and trained in 100-degree environments where the sun never went down. And I also trained in negative 77-degree environments where we never saw the sun. And, Alaska is an absolutely incredible place. It really is the final frontier on Earth. And if you think and have traveled to the Mountain West, think of it like the Mountain West, except it's much, much bigger and it never ends. And so, it was a very unique opportunity. There's some incredible people up there. And I will say, the overall atmosphere of Alaska is very libertarian. It's kind of like, hey, what can I do for you? And the response will be, well, man, the best thing that you could do for me is take care of yourself. Right. And it's just because you can't be a weak person in Alaska and survive. The swings are too great. And the world, the environment will kill you. It will literally kill you. And so it's a very self-sufficient people. And I loved that element of it. Not to say that they wouldn't bend over backwards to help you out, right? But there's just like a different level of expectation. And I would say that Alaskans know what it means to be Alaskan much better than Americans know what it means to be American today.
Probably because they have to.
That's exactly right.
All right. So I do feel like a lot of Carolinians, especially even North Carolina, will watch this. And so where your district, because there's remapping and all this kind of stuff going on, how do you best explain yours? Do you say, hey, it's from Monroe to blah, blah, blah? Like, how do you describe it?
Yeah, it's basically Western Mecklenburg County. Think of 485 and west and moving all the way out to Polk County. We got about half of Polk County in the far west, and then Burke County sits right on top. And Burke County is actually where our manufacturing plant is. We're right in Rutherford College, Connolly Springs. We've got about 80 acres up there, so it kind of sits on both zip codes. So we got two addresses up there. But yeah, it's a really unique district. It's an R+16. So we went from a D+22, the last district, to an R+16. So look,
Wow.
this race that I'm in right now, 38-point swing. Absolutely unbelievable. And because it's such a heavily Republican district, whoever wins the primary in March is going to be the next congressman from that district. So it's a really unique opportunity. We have 3 months and 3 weeks until that primary, and that's it. That's all she wrote. So we're in a great position. Our polling is very strong versus our competition, and we're doing what it takes to build the resources necessary to deliver a winning campaign.
Well, it'll be great to have a friend in Congress. So how do people help you?
Well, look, the first thing is this is going to be one of the most expensive primary races from across the country, perhaps even a top 3 in terms of expenditure. Yes, it's that big of a deal. And the reason is because it's so consequential for North Carolina, but it's also consequential for the future of this country, because we're about to decide what kind of leader we want to send to Washington. Do we want to send somebody that's representative of the overall establishment, the way that things have always been done, and the way that a lot of people still want things to move forward? Or do we actually want to send somebody that cares about the future of this country, is willing to disrupt things where it's worth disrupting and it needs to be disrupted, and is going to listen to his constituents and not the special interests that are whispering into the other ear that people can't see? We're also dealing with a race that has to do a lot with corruption. And, I want to effectively leave it at that. But people that know about this race understand exactly what I'm talking about. And that's exactly what's on the ballot in a couple months. And so I think that there's a very clear choice. I think that there's most people in this district that understand that there's a very clear choice. And to the extent that anyone is willing to pitch in as a volunteer, we're going to have call centers starting up here pretty soon to really get the word out, because we're about to go hot and heavy. We got just over 3.5 months until this, until this cake is cooked, right? Cake is baked. And so anybody who wants to volunteer, we would love to have you. You can actually go to our website. There is a volunteer tab. You can sign up. That's patharrigan.com or harriganforcongress.com, either one. And that's HARRIGAN, kind of like the old jingle, HARRIGAN spells Harrigan, right? But any involvement that people want to have, we want you involved in our campaign. And, by all means, please stay in touch. Anything you're willing to do, we'd be greatly appreciative for.
So we're going to get behind you. Wendy and I are going to get behind you. The Nexus Mountain Network, I'm sure of it, will also be getting behind you, and maybe get some volunteers, some funding, some boots on the ground. Probably shouldn't say that to someone like you, but
no, that's exactly what it is. We got we got to influence and win the hearts and minds, right? We're right back into the unconventional warfare that I grew up in.
So Pat and his wife Rocky, they have the it factor, and Wendy and I are behind them. We asked you guys to get behind them. This is really important time to get involved, and then we can all say we have a friend in the U.S. Congress. Pat, is there anything else you want to say before we close?
Yeah, I would say that Rocky and I don't have the it factor. The Lord's got the it factor, and He's told us, go in this direction. My wife and I don't say no, and we run everything that He directs us to do as hard as we possibly can. I've done that in the military. I've done it in business. Now I'm doing it in politics, and it's not us. It's the path that the Lord has created for us, and that's our driving motivation more than anything else. We want to see His will done on this earth, and the rest is just details. And so thank you all for paying attention. I really appreciate it. Chad, thanks for the opportunity.
You just spoke the language of everybody in this network, is that we're united people who are willing to say, here am I, send me, and they're willing to do it and have the courage to do it. And so is Pat. Give him his support. Thank you so much for coming on the Nexus Mountain Network podcast.
Chad, thanks for having me.
Yeah. See you, everybody.
See you guys. Bye.